A groin strain is basically a tear or a rupture to one of the inside muscles on your groin. It can be caused either by overstretching, it can be caused by sharp change of direction, but generally you'll feel it happen and you'll know that most people say, pulled or torn their groin. This program should be suitable for anyone who thinks that they've strained their groin. Starting with just a small little overstretch all the way through up to someone who thinks that they may have completely torn their groin. Although what I would say is, if you think that you've snapped your groin, you're better off trying to get someone to have a look at it and make sure that it's still attached. Phase 1 can start as soon as possible after the injury, really. The aim is to help protect the injury and to help promote the healing as soon as possible. In terms of treatment methods for an early groin strain, the first thing to do is to make sure that you rest and offload it, and really important that you don't stretch it. You compress it if you can with some taping, and then you ice it. In order to exit phase 1, we recommend that it needs to be at least a minimum of 3 days post-injury. Even for just a little strain, 3 days, it needs that amount of time. It should be pain-free to touch. It should be pain-free on a stretch. You should have applied a cold compress 2 or 3 times a day over those 3 days. And also, you should be able to walk pain-free for around 15 to 20 minutes at a comfortable pace. In phase 2, it's important that you continue with the treatment modalities that you started in phase 1. So ice, compress, and rest it from overloading activities. Alongside that, we can now start doing some strengthening work for the groin itself. The isometric ball squeezes, you start off with a ball between your knees. You want to squeeze your knees together against the ball at around 50 to 70% of your maximum voluntary effort, and it should be pain-free. If it's not pain-free, take the percentage down and the amount of effort you're putting into it down to around 30-40%. It's a really good exercise to A, strengthen the groin, but B, use as a gauge as to how well your groin is improving. Some of the other exercises start bringing in movement-based isotonic type exercises. So things like adductor drags are really useful to start getting a little bit of strength into the area. The exit criteria for this, and the critical one really, is that the isometric ball squeeze is pain-free. So you must be able to squeeze the ball 70% and for it to be pain-free. Alongside that, it should be pain-free on a stretch, it should be pain-free to touch, and you should be able to walk again 15-20 minutes. And if you did do the cycling, that should be pain-free as well. In phase 3, what we're really looking to do is to actually strengthen the adductor or groin muscles. There's a combination of different ways that we look to strengthen the adductor muscles. We use a combination of isometric, which is where there is no movement of the muscle, it's just being put under tension. Then we are also using a kind of heavy resistance to strengthen it. And we're also using some functional strengthening work in terms of things like squats and RDLs. It's really important that you use all the different aspects of the strengthening program, because we want to strengthen the groin in different types of ways using different types of exercises. So it is really important that you do all of the exercises on there, not just the 2 or 3 that look the easiest. In order to exit this phase, all of the exercises that you've been doing should be pain-free. They should also be pain-free the next day, as in you shouldn't have any ache or reaction 24 hours later. You should be able to jog pain-free for around, depending on how fit you are, but 15-20 minutes would be a pretty good target. You should be able to cycle pain-free. You should be able to walk, do all your activities of daily living pain-free. And importantly, it should be pain-free to touch, and it should be pain-free on a stretch. So when you stretch your groin, is there any pain, tightness or discomfort? If there is, it's still not quite ready. Stage 4, groin rehabilitation. Basically this is to continue to improve the strength of your groin muscle, but also to give it a little bit of endurance and expose it to some higher level activities. In terms of the strengthening exercises, again, most of these can be done at home, but if you do have access to a gym, it does make it a little bit easier to put some external load through the groin. And in terms of sort of an adductor drag, you can really sort of load that up in a gym, and it's going to help just improve the strength that much quicker. The other thing that we like to do in this stage is add in some plyometrics. Now, plyometrics are basically a fancy word for jumping and explosive type activities. So the exit criteria for this phase are, most critically, 1, that you can run pain-free, 2, that you can jump and do the plyometrics pain-free, 3, that it's pain-free on a stretch. It should be pain-free to touch, and you should also start to feel that when you do the squeezes, so if you're, for example, doing the ball squeeze, that it should feel that the strength is almost equal, at least 90% right compared to left. So they should start to feel about the same in terms of strength. Phase 5 of groin rehab is the late stage return to training, return to play. Still continue with all the mobility and activation type exercises, and of course the strengthening exercises, but the main thing here is running progressions. It will guide you through and make sure that you've pushed the groin to a high enough intensity to be able to return to sort of training or competition for whatever sport you do really. You should, by this point, be able to run continuously for about 20 minutes at a fairly good pace and not feel your groin at all. The exit criteria for phase 5 are that you're able to complete the running drills pain-free, that you have 100% strength right compared to left, no pain on a stretch, no pain on daily activities of life, it's not tender to touch. Phase 6 is really a maintenance program for the groin, and this is where I see a lot of people go wrong, where they injure their groin, they get it better, they go back, and then they just think everything's going to be fine, and quite often it's not, because there was a reason why it got injured in the first place. It was either too weak, or you asked too much of it, or the body just couldn't cope with what you're asking it to do. So it's really important with the groin that you complete a maintenance program really to maintain the strength and then mobility and movement control around your hip and groin complex. Within the maintenance program, there's some dynamic mobility, there's some stretching, there's some strengthening exercises. There's also some activation and functional exercises, which are also really nice to do as well. You don't need to do these all day, every single day. If you can get these done 2 or 3 times a week in and around your training, it'd be absolutely brilliant. But genuinely, I think it's important that if you've had a groin strain, you do try and do something to keep on top of it, because the last thing you want is to turn one groin strain into multiple groin strains.